Jesus, the Waterbender. You guys know about the kids' TV show called Avatar? Not the blue alien thing that James Cameron put out. I mean, it's a cartoon, and you know what I'm talking about, right?
Earth, fire, air.
Well, Jesus is kind of like Aang in that show. He has control over all the fucking elements. You know, like he can manipulate water, he can fly through the sky, and other things. I'm sure. He's special. Now, as you can see right here in Psalms 107, 25 through 30, for he commanded and raised the stormy wind, which lifted up the waves of the sea. They mounted up to heaven. They went down to the depths. Their courage melted away in their evil plight. They reeled and staggered like drunken men and were at their wits' end. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. He made the storm still, and the waves of the sea were hushed. Then they were glad that the waters were quiet, and he brought them to their desired haven. Now that shows that Yahweh has this magical control over the water, right? Kind of like that girl from the Avatar show.
Years passed and my brother and I discovered the new Avatar.
From here, the New Testament authors were able to drum up 3 separate miracles. One of Jonah and 2 of Jesus. Now, in the book of Jonah, it tells about him, calming the tits of the sea. He was using his waterbending skills in order to do it, but, considering that waterbending isn't a fucking thing, the New Testament authors had to go back into the scriptures, like the Old Testament and the Septuagint and whatnot, and they had to figure out how he would actually calm the tits of the sea. Because it didn't fucking happen. Jonah 1. 13 through 16. Instead, the men did their best to row back to land, but they could not, for the sea grew even wilder than before. Then they cried out to the Lord, "Please, Lord, do not let us die for taking this man's life. Do not hold us accountable for killing an innocent man, for you, Lord, have done as you pleased." Then they took Jonah and threw him overboard, and the raging sea grew calm. At this, the men greatly feared the Lord, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows to him. So, briefly, here are the commonalities between Psalms and Jonah's sea tit calming effort. 1. Lord or Yahweh sends the storm. 2. The sailors try to fight the storm and fail. 3. The sailors cry for mercy. 4. God ends up changing his mind about the storm. He doesn't want to kill him yet. He wants to toy with him a little bit more. And 5. The sailors grovel at the feet of God. Well, not literal feet, but you get what I'm saying. Matthew then goes to set up Jonah as like a prefiguring of Jesus. Matthew 12:39 through 40. He answered, "A wicked and adulterous generation asks for a sign, but none will be given it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a huge fish, so the Son of Man will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." This kind of sets up part of Jesus' waterbending efforts. I mean, if Jonah did it, then Jesus has to do it, and he has to do it 10 times better. He's the guy in the corner that wants to one-up you. I mean, shit, I don't know, maybe Jesus is going to come in with some titty tassels, and he's going to calm the seas that way. The Sea of Galilee. Mark 4:37 through 41. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion, and they woke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" And he awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. He said to them, "Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great fear and said to one another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and sea obey him. Now, with this passage, we can't really tell whether or not Mark was using Psalms as a precursory to Jesus' power, but we do know that Mark, or at least Mark's source, got his version of it from Psalms with a few key words that you can find and match up. Matthew, on the other hand, he gets all smart. He does a little bit better than Mark because, he wants to be a bit more true to the actual Septuagint. And so he goes to the Septuagint and he rewrites it a little bit. We can know this because of the wording that he uses in his particular version of the story matches the shit in the Septuagint. The word rebuked is the same one that's used in the Septuagint, the Greek word for it, whatever the fuck that is. They use the same one, and so that would include the author of Matthew to go and look in the Septuagint to see exactly how Yahweh likes to calm the tits of the sea. Me, personally, I like to rub them. Sea titties. In Mark, the boat was swamped instead of like in Matthew where it says it was covered with water, of course, because they're in the sea. This is waterbending shit. Matthew even uses the same word when the apostles go and wandered about Jesus' skills. And it's the same kind of wandered or the same verb or whatever the fuck ever that the Septuagint uses when it talks about God and his wondrous acts. Matthew was also able to connect Matthew and Psalms to the first chapter of Jonah, when he used his powers to calm the magnificent tits of the sea. Mark has the apostles being totally ungrateful dicks by saying, "We are perishing, do you not care?" Does that not just sound emo as fuck? And Matthew was like, well, fuck this emo shit. My apostles are gonna pray and try to fix some shit, and then Jesus will show up and calm the titties of the storm, and then Jesus will show up like Storm from the X-Men and will totally calm the sea tits. To build this prayer that the apostles do, Matthew actually goes to Jonah and he looks at a key speech that was given to Jonah by the captain of his ship. Being a prefigure to Jesus and shit. He took Lord, save us, and we perish. Thus, Matthew rewrites Mark's fictional account of shit Jesus did with another fictional account of something that never happened. Finally, he's walking on water. Jesus also pimp walked on water. I mean, really, it's just a variant of calming sea titties, but, whatever. This particular miracle is from Psalm and most likely part of Job. In Job 9:8, there's this part that says, walks on the sea as upon the land. And the same kind of phrase is used to describe Jesus' pimp walk across the water. Now, as we did previously, we can connect up a few key words in both of these accounts, and we could show that the person that wrote the Jesus miracle actually pulled it from the Job and Psalms. In Psalms, the sailors are troubled and cry out to the Lord. And in Mark, the disciples cry out because they are troubled. Cry and troubled are the key words here, and they are used in both sets of sources and in the same way, using the same Greek, so that's how you know that Mark pulled his shit from Psalms. Now, Matthew, of course, he's got to throw in his own bells, whistles, and holograms about this shit. Because he then has Peter try to copy Jesus and, get his happy ass out there on the water. What are you thinking, Peter? You're not Jesus. Get off that water, boy. Unfortunately, Peter loses concentration and becomes wasted. Oddly enough, this actually correlates to something that Buddhist missionaries taught about Buddha. And they were telling this particular story around Syria and Egypt, at the time of the writing of the Bible. Alright, so this is how it goes down. Some guy is trying to go and see Buddha, and they get to this dock, and there's no boat. So, of course, the only natural thing to do is to step out onto the water and walk across. And it was all because he had faith in Jesus. Buddha, he stepped out onto the water and he was actually able to stand on it. There were a couple times where he faltered in meditation and he started to sink down into the water, but then he regained it and he was able to complete his journey across the river. Apparently Peter is just some dumbass that can't meditate worth shit. Or maybe he wasn't a real Christian. Thank you for joining me today on this Did Jesus Exist? Please leave all comments down below. I would love to hear your ideas on how these miracles are related to the older portions of the Bible and how I feel that they have been plagiarized and recounted into the New Testament as miracles of Jesus. Also, don't forget to like this. If this is your first time here, I would really love to have you as a subscriber as you follow me through this journey on questioning whether or not did Jesus exist. As always, think skeptically and question everything.